Hey guys, how are you? I am excited. It's Monday and I try to do live webinars every Monday. So I'm hopping on. I'm going to wait just a couple of minutes and give people time to kind of hop on and join. If you are here, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to, in the comments, just share your name, where you're from, maybe what you do. I absolutely love to know who's watching. And as I share some of this stuff, it just helps to kind of know what you do so that I can personalize it a little bit and we can talk about some things that are probably important for you in your current position. So I'm going to wait. I'm terrible. I have zero wait time, but I'm going to try to wait just a couple of minutes and see who hops on. And while I do that, you guys feel free to introduce yourself in the comments for sure. Couple of more people hopping on. I'm going to pull the comments up so I can see them. Sometimes there's a lag. So if you put a comment up and I don't see it right away and don't address it, I'll get it. Just give me just a second to see it. Sometimes it's a little bit behind on my end. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hello, Nancy. I'm so excited that you're here. And I am really looking forward to tonight because that's exactly what we're going to be doing is looking forward and looking ahead. You know, I think I said this last week, but this has really been like an obstacle course, right? There have been so many opportunities in this journey, but there have been so many obstacles. And right now we're kind of in the middle of that obstacle course, but there's going to come this time when we're able to look back and see all of the things that we've overcome, all of the things that we've been able to do because of this experience. We're just not there yet. And so I thought, you know what, I think I'm going to do a webinar, and I've actually done a couple of webinars. I've been lucky enough to be invited to share on some things where we talked about, hey, Yolanda, how are you? Where we talked about kind of looking forward. And I thought I want to hop on and have this conversation with the Meaningful Mess community for sure. So that being said, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. As we've kind of gone through this journey, it's important to realize that we were thrown into a situation where we had to be very reactive, right? We had to react to the situation that we were thrown into. But now we have the opportunity to be proactive. Now, if we are intentional and purposeful about looking forward and thinking about all of the things that we've learned, all of the things that we've seen happen as a result of this remote learning experience, we have this opportunity to kind of think through what fall is going to look like so that we don't find ourselves in that same situation of being reactive, but instead we will have been proactive enough to kind of think through some of these opportunities that exist now because of this experience. So as we go through, I did something a little different tonight. I'm getting fancy. I created some slides just so that I could make sure I shared everything that I wanted to share. Lisa, hi, I'm so excited that you're here from Ohio. Very, very cool. All right. So I am going to share my slides with you guys, and hopefully this will work. All right. So you can see my slides, and I'm going to kind of go through here. My contact information is here, but I'll share that again at the end for sure. I saw this quote today and I thought, gosh, what a great way to think of this. And it's just replace the fear of the unknown with curiosity, right? What if we did that? What if instead of this anxiety that we fear from the unknown, because so many people in the form that filled out the form, so many people said, I don't know, the fear of the unknown, right? It's we don't know what's coming up. We don't have a whole lot of answers right now of what school is going to look like. And look, I'm not here to give you answers for that. If that's what you're hoping for, wrong person. I don't get to make those decisions. But what I will say is regardless of what school looks like, and we're going to talk about some things that school could look like, but regardless of whatever happens, there are some practical things that we already know and some practical things that we can do right now to be ready for whatever the learning experience looks like moving forward. So thinking about this quote, replace the fear of the unknown with curiosity. You know, I'm a big what if person. What if this happens? And sometimes that's not always a good thing. But I thought, what if we kind of played that game? What if we did the what if? And so I just want to ask you, what if remote learning leads to? And I want you to think of three things. And if you'll just put one in the comments, that would be really helpful. In the comments, if you'll just put one thing, and then later on you can think of the three. But what is something you would like to see happen as a result of remote learning? And I'm going to kind of watch the comments. You guys tell me, what are some things that you would like to see happen as a result of remote learning? So if you had to ask yourself, what if remote learning leads to, how would you fill in that blank? And I'm going to wait just a second and see what pops up in the comments, and give you just a second to think about that. I am definitely going to share the things that I hope remote learning leads to for sure. Nancy, I love that. Students being more engaged in their education by using remote tools for sure. And we're going to talk about some specific tools in this webinar. Anything else, you guys? Everyone having equal access. Maggie, hey, how are you? I'm so excited that you're here. That's been a big conversation for sure. Just that equity issue of some kids having access to things other kids don't have access. I know that when we talk about grading things and what does that look like, because some kids have their parents at home to keep them on a schedule. Some kids do not have their parents at home. That's a big, big conversation right now, and something that we're going to have to consider moving forward for sure, regardless of what this looks like. All right, you guys keep putting your thoughts in the chat, and I'll try to kind of follow along. But thinking through that, be intentional about making that list. Like later on, think through what are some things that you would like to see come from this remote learning experience. Because if we only focus on the negative, if we only focus on the things that have happened that are negative, we're going to miss these huge opportunities to see the things that have happened that are positive. I'm seeing some other things. Oh, Yolanda, I love that. More meaningful connections, more curiosity and motivation. Yes, I think that's something that if we're purposeful and intentional moving forward, we can kind of cultivate that curiosity. But the reality is curiosity has to be cultivated. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Students finding a passion and pursuing that through online platforms. Oh my gosh, Lisa, like you're speaking my language. Sounds a little bit like Genius Hour, and we're going to talk about that for sure. Not living in fear because the feedback isn't instantaneous. I actually was talking with a student last week, and he was sharing that's one of the big things that he's had to get used to through this experience is that he doesn't have instant access to his teachers for them to tell him whether or not he's doing something correctly, and that's been difficult. So true, Maggie. Some kids are totally excelling because they're going at their own pace. I know that I've talked to so many friends who are educators, and they've said, you know, one of the biggest things that's come out of this is some of my struggling learners have kind of found their groove because they're not having to keep up with us. They're able to learn in a way that makes sense for them, and that's working. I hope it leads to extending our learning and stretching our way of reaching our students. So cool. Such great stuff. I could not agree more. Okay, well, somebody asked in the forum today, where do we start? And I thought that's such a great question. It's a hard question, but I think a lot of us are asking that. Like, okay, now that we're kind of at the end of this kind of school year of where everything's been thrown at us and we've been so reactive, where do we start with preparing for next year? Where do we start with preparing for summer school? What does that look like? How do we do that? And I just kind of think we start with what we know, right? And what we know is that learning happens everywhere. Learning doesn't have to happen in a school building. We as educators know that learning can happen anywhere and everywhere. Unfortunately, our students have been conditioned to think that learning happens at school. And so making this transition from learning happening in this school building where I go and somebody tells me how to do, what to do, when to do, where to do, to now this new learning experience where I have to manage things on my own and I have to have all of these social emotional skills in order to do that. It's difficult and it's a little bit weird. And so they're learning how to navigate that. And here's the thing, just when they get kind of in the groove of learning how to navigate that, if we drop this and we lose this momentum that a lot of us have or that a lot of our learners have, that may not be a good thing. So we're going to talk about summer. We're going to talk about the fall, and we're going to talk about how do we start to think through this regardless of what it looks like. Because I'll tell you, nobody knows what it's going to look like right now. I don't think. I think there are still decisions being made, and there are so many options. I've talked to lots of big districts who have, 3 or 4 plans of here are some of our options. I know that a lot of people are still just waiting to see kind of where we are. It's just kind of all up in the air. And as educators, we don't like that. We like to be prepared, and we like to kind of know what's coming. So let's talk through kind of what that can look like. So there's 3 big ideas we're going to talk about in this webinar tonight. First of all, we're going to talk about having a new perspective and some things that I think have really shifted throughout this time. We're going to talk about summer enrichment. And then we're going to talk about focusing on the fall. So those are kind of the things we're going to break this into. And as we go through this, I hope you guys will get some really practical things. That's always my goal. Is I'm a big idea person. I love to talk about the big ideas and how we can create change and move forward. But ultimately, I want you guys to walk out of this webinar with kind of be able to kind of take a deep breath and go, you know what, we can do this. And there are tools in place and things we can use, and there's support out there. It's just a matter of having these conversations. I think that's a big part of it too. If we wait to have these conversations until it feels comfortable or until we have answers, I think we're going to be in trouble. I think we need to start having the conversation now. And so that's what we're going to do tonight. All right. So those are kind of the 3 big ideas we're going to talk about. First of all, let's talk about some ways our perspective has changed. I think, first of all, when we think about perspective, understanding what that is, it's that particular attitude or way of regarding something. And look, let's be honest. I think that I have, even being a digital innovation specialist, that's what I do during the day. I work for ESC Region 12, and I have particular attitudes regarding certain things, right? How I think schools should work or all of these things. And I think we all have those. So thinking through that, can you think of something that was kind of embedded in how you saw the learning experience that has shifted? Has there been something that in which your perspective has changed throughout this time? If there is, drop that in the chat. I would love to hear you guys share how your perspective has changed. While you do that, I want to share 3 big things that I think the education community has really had to think about. First of all, I think we've had to really consider student ownership, right? We have always been in this situation where we have kind of dictated how things operate. And even when we let our students drive the learning, ultimately we had control of the situation. I think I shared last week, it's very much like a seesaw, right? And so if you're on a seesaw, who has control? It's the person who is holding their weight is on the seesaw, right? And so that's always been educators. We've decided when we give up that control. So we would push up when we're okay with giving up that control. And then that was kind of what we did. And a lot of us, if we're honest, kind of stayed on the bottom and held on to that control. Well, now with the remote learning experience with COVID-19, that has shifted. And so now we are no longer in control. Our students are the ones in control of what they learn, when they learn, how they learn. And we're just kind of dangling up here in the air trying to figure it all out. And that can be a really uncomfortable place to be. But here's what I think makes that situation better. When you think about a seesaw, it is only fun and it only works when it's a give and take, right? When you control a little bit, you give up some of that control, you control a little bit, you give up that control. That's when a seesaw works the way it's supposed to work. And so as we think through that, I think that when we go back in the fall or whatever that looks like, I think we're going to have to get really comfortable with that situation, that giving up control, knowing when it's important to have control, but it's no longer going to be us in control of the learning all of the time, because our students have had a big dose of what it feels like to control that learning. And so have the parents. So that whole student ownership is going to be something that's going to look very different, I think, moving forward. Role of technology. Right before all this happened, ed tech is a huge world. There are so many amazing tools out there. But just like we talked about at the beginning of this webinar, the equity issue exists. I think we also have to think about meaningful technology. I think we have gotten in the habit in education of using technology for the sake of using it, right? Oh, this is cool. This is neat. Let's try this. Well, now in this situation, I've talked to so many teachers who said, I can't introduce one more tech tool. I have to like draw the line and say, we're going to use these three tools, or we're going to use these two tools during this experience. And that's important. So I think thinking about this, we have to really be intentional about meaningful technology. So that means thinking through, does it engage and empower my learners? Does it help them make connections? Does it deepen their understanding? If it doesn't do 1, 2, or all of those things, then don't use it, right? Using it just for the sake of using it, I think we have realized just isn't going to work anymore. And then I think the other perspective that has really shifted is that homeschool connection. Our parents have had a lens looking into their students and their kids and how they learn, right? They're with them every day, and they're getting to see how they learn, how they react to learning. And they're also getting to see what learning looks like right now. The things that you guys are sending home or the things that you're providing digitally, they're probably realizing how different school is right now, how different learning looks. And so, but that homeschool connection is so powerful. And I hope more than anything that we continue to hold on to that connection that has been created because of this experience. I think one of the things that I think is really important, if you've been doing weekly Zoom calls with your parents, don't stop doing that just because we go back to school. Don't stop connecting with them. That bond or that connection needs to stay in place. And I hope that that's something really big that comes out of this experience. Okay, so those are 3 big perspectives that I think have kind of started to shift during this experience. What do you guys think? Give me some feedback in the comments. Are you with me? Do you agree, disagree? Student ownership, the role of technology, and that homeschool connection, the perspective around those things, it's changed, right? It's different. Some of those are more of a priority, or we're just thinking about them differently. I'm watching the comments. I'm just waiting for you guys to interact. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on just so we can keep it going, and then we'll definitely, I'll be checking the comments. Okay, so as we think through summer enrichment, I want to really get to the fall and talk about some things we can do there, because that was really what most of the comments were about in the forum. I think, first of all, when we think about summer enrichment, we have to realize summer is still summer. It's really tempting to be really stressed about the things that our students weren't able to do, that they had to miss out on, or we feel like we have to make up the time that we've missed. So it's really tempting to think, oh, well, we'll just use some summertime to do that, or we'll have them do these things in the summer. Look, summer is still summer. We can't take away their summer just because of this experience. They need a break, just like we need a break. I don't know about you guys, but gosh, Zoom fatigue is a real thing. I am worn out from Zoom. And if I never have another Zoom call again, I think I might be okay with that. But thinking through, understanding summer is still summer, that's going to be a big thing that we have to remember. I think too, encouraging and supporting summer learning is what we have to do. It can't be mandated. It's not going to be something we're going to have to make them do, but it's something we can encourage and support and offer, I think, for our parents and for our students as well. I think if they can start to see learning as that thing that happens everywhere versus this checklist that I have to do, we're going to be in a much better place. Okay, I'm looking at some of the comments. Yeah, it's so true, Lisa. It really is. It really has been their choice. They're either in or they're out. And a lot of them have decided to be out. And when we get to the designing experiences, I hope to help with that a little bit. Students being more empowered. Ownership has been an issue the last week. I think that ownership has been hard because they're just like us, right? When they started this journey, it was like, oh, this is fun. This is challenging. And then all of a sudden we got to this part where this isn't fun and it's not challenging anymore. We just want to be at school with our friends and we don't want to do this anymore. And we're all there. And if we as adults are there, you can only imagine how much they feel that as well. And so they are getting tired. They're worn out. And so that's going to become harder, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that you're not doing your job well as a teacher. it also doesn't mean that they're not doing their job well as a learner. It just means we're all tired and we may need a little bit of a break, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Lisa, that's so cool. Those stronger relationships with parents, I hope so much that carries on into the fall. So one of the ideas that I was thinking about today is that instead of, sending home anything that's kind of checklisty or that seems like student work, I think it might be cool to create a summer learning portal. So whether you do that in your LMS, so if your learning management system, so if you use Google Classroom or if you use Schoology or whatever it is that you use, just create a space where you drop in learning experiences every now and then. Maybe it's a really fun Wonderopolis article. Maybe it is a TED Talk. Maybe it's an opportunity to learn. It's a book club. I don't know what that is. But whatever you put in there, it's just a summer learning portal that they can visit and they can experience when they want to, right? I think doing something like that gives them the opportunity. And again, you're encouraging and supporting that learning, but you're not making it feel like something they have to do or something that is mandated. I think that's a really cool option and something that can be done easily. What do you guys think about creating summer learning portals? Also, you could front load all of that. So you could drop in those assignments now and time them, schedule them so that they go out maybe one each week. And so that they have that throughout the summer if the parents want that, or if the kids get bored and they want that. We are learners and kids are learners as well. They love to learn stuff. They like to learn on their terms. But this generation of kids, they do like to learn. And so we're going to talk about designing those experiences. But Nancy, I'm glad you like the summer learning, that summer learning portal. I think that could be really powerful. And again, it would give you an opportunity to front load that so that it's not like you're constantly having to do stuff in the summer, because we're going to need a little bit of a break as well. And I know that we, so often, so many of us don't take breaks during the summer, but I have a sneaky suspicion that we are definitely going to need a few weeks to recover from whatever it is that just happened for sure. Okay, so those are some things that you can consider during the summer. I know that some of you have to do summer school and there's things in place, and we're going to talk about how you can design experiences specifically for that. But let's talk about focusing on the fall, because that's what so many of the questions on the form, that's what they were about. What is the fall going to look like and how can we do this? I think there's three things that we need to really start preparing ourselves for, because like I said, we don't know what this is going to look like, but if we do these three things, it won't matter what it looks like. We will be able to design meaningful learning experiences for our students, regardless of whether they're in our classroom or they are learning from home, or it is a hybrid of both. And so let's just start with designing blended learning experiences. I have been talking about this from the beginning. I feel very strongly that these three pieces have to be embedded into everything that we do right now. I think, first of all, engaging our learners, getting to that willingness to invest. Gosh, that's never been more important. So many of them are checking out or they don't want to learn because there's just not that willingness to invest anymore. And we as educators have to be intentional about getting to that first. What can I do right out of the gate to get them excited about this learning experience? What can I do to help them want to learn this material? And so after you've engaged them, then it's about designing that experience, right? Where is that opportunity to learn? Is that going to be through a video from me? Is that going to be a face-to-face experience? It doesn't matter if you just think of it as that opportunity to learn. It may be a makerspace experience that they work on and the learning is embedded in that experience. But that second piece, after you've gotten to the willingness to invest, is really that opportunity to learn whatever standard, whatever content, whatever idea it is that you need them to kind of master or learn. And then finally, that third piece is the empowerment piece. So how can I really empower my learners to make connections? So now that they were willing to invest, they've learned it, how do I help them do something with it? I think that's a piece that's been missing for a long time in education. It's like, check, check, you know it, let's move on. Well, sometimes that check, check doesn't result in real learning. And so we have to be really honest about you know what, if they can apply it, if they can do it, chances are they reach that deep level of understanding where real learning happened. But just because they can regurgitate it on a unit test or a worksheet does not mean that they've learned it. It means that they've memorized it. And once that memorization, or once they forget that, or they don't have it memorized anymore, if they haven't learned how to apply it, then it goes away. So I think thinking through those three pieces, and I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like right now. And I've shown this before, but I want to make sure that I show you guys everything I want to show you. So let me go here, and I'm going to share. Let's see. I think this is what I want to show. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see my screen. Let me make sure. Yes. So this website is the one that I have been sharing so much, and I've added to this as we think about moving forward. And so you can see here are the pieces: the willingness to invest, the opportunity to learn, and the opportunity to make those connections. I've shared a resource here where you can kind of plan those out. And then finally, as you go down, I just share some practical ways. Somebody asked in the comments, what does that look like? Here are some ways that you can do that. These are just springboards for your own ideas. I'm sure you guys have lots of ways that you could do this. These are just some quick ways that I've shared. And then how your students can document their learning. Now, as we think about going back to school, whether they are in the classroom, whether they are at home, or whether it is a mixture of both, when we think about designing experiences this way, it won't matter where they are. It won't matter what that looks like, because if we design an experience, whether it's a weekly or a daily experience, I think that when you kind of see how I set this up, it'll begin to make sense. So I looked at my daughter's standards, and I was able to design an experience for her using these three pieces. So one of the things that she needed to learn about was the hurricane of 1900. They were also going to be learning about catastrophic events in science. I wanted her to practice vocabulary and reading, as well as some math skills. So my engage piece was for her to watch a news piece on the hurricane of 1900. Now that just happened to happen in Texas. And so that kind of got her interested. And as she watched it, we had been to Galveston not too long ago. And so I was able to kind of tie in some of those, hey, remember when we went to that Galveston pier? And all of a sudden that willingness to invest started to be there. And then the experience was for her to learn by watching some videos. There were some Wonderopolis things that she could access. And then the empowerment piece. So where she had to connect all that she had learned to her actual environment. So she was thinking about our wind speed outside and comparing it to the wind speed of a Category 5 hurricane. And so the vocabulary practice came in the Wonderopolis articles and the reading comprehension. The math came in the empowerment piece where she had to use some multiplication. And then I also gave her an enrichment piece. And that's when I was able to weave in kind of the life ready skill of creativity. So you can kind of see how that works. But if you'll look right up here on the website, I created this Beyond Remote Learning resource. And so I just talk a little bit about what I think this can look like if we have to move this into next year. But y'all, even if they're in the classroom, engage, experience, and empower. I have been saying for 3 years, engage your students as soon as they walk into the classroom, design an experience that they're willing to invest in, and empower them to take that learning beyond the walls of the classroom. So if we can think in these three pieces when we're designing these experiences, weaving our content in, weaving life-ready skills and social emotional skills into these experiences, it won't matter where they are. It won't matter what learning looks like. It will just be this experience of making these connections, and that makes so much sense to me. So you can kind of look through here. There's also a place for you to kind of give feedback. I created a single point rubric for you to give feedback to your learners as they kind of go through each one of those pieces, just different things for you to explore. But I think as we think through those three pieces, in my mind, that makes sense because it's designing an experience versus so if we go back and it's a hybrid experience where they're at school sometimes and they are at home sometimes, we are no longer going to be able to do, I don't think, the whole, today you're going to learn this, tomorrow you're going to learn this. That fast paced check, check, check will not continue to work. And I don't even know that it'll continue to work when they come back into the classroom full time, because learning is going to look so different for them. They're going to see it differently. There's going to be a different perspective that they have. Nancy says she's using the 3 E's. The connection part is the most difficult. Yeah, it's so true. That's such a good point. The connection part is hard for them because they've never seen learning that way. They don't know how to make the connection to, we've always kept school and not school very separate, right? School and home. I learn at school, I go home and do what I want. And they've never made that connection. So many of them, not all of them, but so many of them have never made that connection that learning happens everywhere, that school is just a place, learning is an experience. And so when we think through that and when we get them to shift their mindset and see that, Nancy, I think those connections would start to come a little bit easier. Okay, you guys tell me really quickly in the comments, what do you think about the 3 E's, designing an experience that way? Does that make sense? Is it something that you could kind of latch onto and think about moving forward? That's not the only thing we're going to talk about. I have several other things to share. But I just really think that designing a meaningful experience has to, and the more I talk to teachers, it's sometimes so easy to see which piece is missing. So a lot of times when they'll say, gosh, I just can't get them to want to learn. Well, usually the engage piece, that willingness to invest, you forgot to do that, right? We have to get that willingness to invest first. Sometimes if a student doesn't understand something, sometimes we did a really cool activity or a really cool experience, but that opportunity to learn just wasn't solid enough. And then if they can't remember it or they don't really have that deep level of understanding, it's because we didn't empower them to make those connections. So I think thinking through all 3 of those pieces really just kind of helps me think through an experience, what it should look like, and what pieces need to be in place in the fall, regardless of what it looks like and what we're going back to, for sure. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to go back to my slideshow because I want to make sure that I share everything with you guys. As I kind of hop back in, let me get back here. Sorry, I'm having to maneuver all of this. If you guys want access to those 3 E's or you just want to kind of look around that website, it's just bit.ly/DMLE, Designing Meaningful Learning Experiences 2020. So definitely check that out. You can always go to my website, andymcnair.com, and find that on the front page as well. It's at the very top. So either way is great. Check it out. Feel free to use it if you want, or don't if you don't want to. Totally your call. Okay. I think another thing that we're going to have to really focus on in the fall as educators and for our learners is cultivating collaboration. And one of the things that I've really noticed in this experience is that collaboration does have to be cultivated. It's not something that comes naturally. It's not something that we can just expect people to know how to do. It's something that has to be cultivated. And, I was thinking, all of a sudden, when this kind of happened, I became like Betty Crocker and I started growing plants and I travel a lot. And so when that traveling was taken away and I can't do that anymore, I needed somewhere for that energy to go. And so, cooking and all of these things, I think that for me, growing plants is really difficult. I don't know why. I literally cannot keep a plant alive, and I'm not sure what I do wrong. But I have noticed that I have a couple of little plants that are staying alive, and I'm so excited about them. They're so cute, and I talk to them every morning. It's weird. I don't know what is happening to me. But those little plants, I think, are doing okay because I've been consistent with them, right? There are things that I do every day. I go out and check on them. I make sure they have water. And so I think the same is true for collaboration. I think we have to be consistent with that, whether it be with other educators or we're giving our students that opportunity to collaborate. Consistency is very, very important and something that we have to be intentional about. I think asking for feedback. So asking our peers, asking our colleagues, asking our students, what does it feel like to collaborate? What's hard about that? Where do you struggle with collaboration? I think those are all good conversations to have. And then leading by example. So being willing to collaborate. So much of this is just a willingness, right? Being willing to do some different things. I think leading by example is a big thing. So why is collaboration really important for educators right now? Because when we go back I think that, again, regardless of what it looks like, if we're in the classroom full time, if it's a situation where it is home and school, or it is all at home, that collaboration is going to allow us to design cross-curricular experiences. And I think one of the things that we've realized kind of on this journey is that it's really not that difficult to weave several content areas together. So many people who do PBL know that it's so easy to put so many content areas into one project. But thinking through, how can we be intentional about collaborating as content specialists? So when you think about specifically high school teachers, you guys are so strong in your content, but what would it look like to come together and design experiences together for your students, so that instead of assigning 7 different learning experiences, we're able to design one really meaningful learning experiences in which all of the content, the life ready skills, social emotional pieces are all woven into that. That is going to start to make more sense, I think, as we move forward, versus a student having to create, or having to complete all of these different assignments for all of these different teachers. That's not sustainable. And I think we're seeing that now as our students kind of drop off and stop doing the work, for sure. I'm looking at some of your comments now. Oh, Yolanda, I love that. Using the 3 E's in a HyperDoc format for math. I'm glad that the feedback has been positive. It's very cool. And Lisa says, GT kids can definitely be challenging. That is true. I can speak to that as well. And all 3 pieces are key. I agree. So again, cultivating collaboration, whether it be with your students or with your colleagues, is going to be really important moving forward. We're going to need each other, y'all. I mean, this is going to be hard regardless of what it looks like in the fall. But if we start to, like we've talked about this whole webinar, if we're proactive and start considering what is this going to look like now, we're going to be in a much better place versus waiting and trying to come up with a solution that is turnkey and just fits in a box. What we have to come up with is something that acknowledges learning happens everywhere, and helping our students understand that, and not only understand that, but live it day in and day out. I think that's what's going to happen as a result of this whole COVID-19 experience. Okay, so thinking about collaboration, very, very important. And then the next thing I want to share is just prioritizing projects. Projects are such a powerful way to learn. And that's been a big conversation in so many of the chats that I've been in or people I've talked with. They have found that, when I am designing projects, or when I give my students an opportunity to work on projects, that's when I'm really able to weave in all of these pieces that are so important. So I always think about PBL in kind of 3 different ways. Project-based learning, which is when everybody kind of has a project, the teacher gives them a project. Problem-based learning, when they are solving a problem. And then, of course, my personal favorite, passion-based learning. And so when we think about those things, passion-based learning is definitely my favorite because I think it's the most meaningful for our learners. It just makes sense that if they're pursuing their passion and learning through that, that willingness to invest that we talked about earlier is going to be a little bit stronger. It just is, because they're being given that opportunity to pursue their passions. So Monica, I love that. Choice menus and HyperDocs. I love that you're doing that. Very, very cool. Choice boards have been huge during this time and gives the learners some control over their learning, which is awesome. Okay, so when we think about prioritizing projects, I wanted to share a few resources with you guys. First of all, the Genius Hour at Home resource. That is just something I created. If you're interested, I'm going to share my screen with you guys so you can kind of see what it looks like. This is the Genius Hour Home Edition. Looks like this. And a kid can just kind of go through this independently. They don't necessarily need you, their teacher, helping them. I've recorded videos on each step along with each one of the resources that they need. And I actually tell them to stop and document their learning to share with you, their teacher. And they can just go through and access all of these different things. It's just something I created, something you're welcome to use, whether your students are learning at home or in the classroom, regardless of where they are. Genius Hour, that passion-based learning, can be a priority. Another thing that I wanted to make sure that I shared is that I have also created for Thrively, which I'm a big fan of Thrively, it's not a secret, I went ahead and put some projects in here. So I don't know if you can see. Let me make sure you can see this. Yes. Okay. So as I scroll down, you guys can see this is the Thrively playlist for the 6 P's of Genius Hour. So there are 2 lessons, which walks them through what is Genius Hour and the 6 P's. But then there are projects that I've created. And so there's a passion for astronomy, a passion for life science, a passion for fine arts, and we're working on a passion for geography, a passion for numbers. So they go in and they work on that project and they document all of their learning in Thrively. And there are videos from me and I tell them exactly what to do. So again, as an educator, all you have to do is facilitate that. So one of the questions in the form, somebody had asked, what do we do for enrichment or for our gifted learners or for kids who are ready for something different? This is a great resource for that. So right now you can access this totally free by just getting a Thrively account. And then when you find this playlist and you check out, you just use the code 6Ps Andy, and I'll actually put that. If you'll email me if you're interested in this, I'll send you exactly how to get registered. Oh, Joni, perfect. It's free until June 30th. So if you have any questions, we can definitely ask Thrively. I know that they're giving this away totally free up until June 30th. So yes, that's the code. I'm going to put that in here so you guys have it. It's all caps. I did that wrong. Sorry. There we go. Okay, so definitely something that you can check out in Thrively for totally free using that code. And all those projects are there. And like I said, I'm continually adding projects. So hopefully by the end of next week, there will be 10 or 12 projects in there for your students to explore. But the whole goal there is for students to be able to work on Genius Hour without you guys as educators having a ton on your plate. Hey, Holly, how are you? Parents can definitely access this. So you would just log in the same way. And again, when you go to checkout, it's going to look like you have to pay for it. But if you just use that code, it'll change it to $0. So definitely something to check out for sure. Again, that's in Thrively, Thrively.com. And you want to find the 6 P's of Genius Hour playlist, use that code, and you'll be able to access it for free. But I thought, gosh, what a great way. And then one thing I didn't show you is those goals. So those are life-ready skills that they're working on as they're working on their project, so that they're practicing those life-ready skills as they work through their Genius Hour project. Okay, I hope that makes sense. All right, all of that being said, I'm going to go back now and share my slides. We're almost done, I promise. Thank you guys for hanging in. I want to make sure that I share everything with you that I wanted to share. Another great resource, a lot of you I know are not in Texas, but we do have the Texas Performance Standards projects. They are amazing and they're such a great resource, and I don't think everybody knows about them. So I wanted to make sure that I kind of show you those, and the link is there. It's texaspsp.org, texaspsp.org. So let me show you what that looks like. I'm sorry if you're getting seasick from watching me go back and forth. Let me go here so you can kind of see what it looks like. This is the website, and it's actually divided up into grade levels, which is awesome. So let's say I'm a middle school teacher. I click here, and then I have access to all of these different projects. So I can go to Task Library, and all of these projects are here, and they're totally free. Just an amazing resource. And so you can click, and you can access all of these different things. Again, you can sort by grade level, but just really cool projects that you can access and use and share. Just a good resource, I think. If nothing else, to use as a springboard for ideas. So what do you guys think about some of these resources, whether it be Genius Hour at home or the Genius Hour projects in Thrively or the Texas PSP? You guys tell me in the comments kind of what you're thinking and how you feel about some of these things that I've shared. And while you do that, I'm going to shift back to my slides. Okay, all of a sudden y'all got super quiet. Lisa did say that her kids enjoyed Thrively a couple of years ago. You will definitely have to bring it back, Lisa. I would love that. And I hope that those projects are helpful because they're already created. So not having to think through a new project. Sometimes with Genius Hour, it's just hard to get started or know what to do. And so the 6 Ps are built right into Thrively now so that they can work through that. And all of their information is stored right there in Thrively. Hey, Leanne, how are you? I'm glad that you love Genius Hour at home. It makes so much sense for sure. Joni, I could not agree more. Passion projects are the best for sure. Okay, so ticking right along. Oh, I missed a. Thank you, Yolanda. I always hope that's my goal, is to make it easy for you guys because, gosh, you have so much on your plate right now for sure. Okay, so before we wrap up, I just want to remind you, take some time to think through those 3 pieces that we talked about. Remember, I asked you to think of 3 things, 3 what ifs. What if remote learning results in whatever that is? And we thought about one and we shared those. But I think that will help us kind of change our perspective for the fall. I think one of the things that it's really important to remember right now is learning is an experience. School is a place. Right? So just because we don't have school to go to, that doesn't mean learning stops. But that's something our learners still have to figure out. They don't see so much of what they're doing at home right now. They don't see that as learning. But if we can find ways to weave learning into what they're doing every day, and they begin to make those connections to things that they do every day, oh my gosh, what an opportunity that'll be. And we will have changed the perspective of what learning can look like. And so I think thinking through when we talk about the fall, and we get, so many of us get anxious about that because it is the unknown and we aren't sure exactly what's going to happen. I think that if we are intentional and purposeful about thinking through those 3 pieces, how can I engage my students? How am I going to get to that willingness to invest? How can I design an opportunity to learn? And, so many people will say to me, Andy, I would love to be able to design experiences. I don't know what that looks like. Here's what I say to that. The definition of an experience is just something that leaves an impression. So just ask yourself, is what I'm doing today, what I've designed, is that going to leave an impression on my learners? If it is, then absolutely it's an experience. It's really that simple. And then what can I do to empower them to make connections? So what can I do to help them take whatever it is we've learned, either in the classroom or in a remote learning experience, or possibly both, and connect it to outside, right? To the things that they do and see and learn every single day. All of a sudden, learning becomes an experience. It becomes real, and it becomes something that they will be willing to invest in because they can connect to it. And y'all, I'm telling you, when that starts happening, education will be forever changed. And we will have taken this huge obstacle, this really difficult situation, and we will have used it to springboard our students, to make our students really understand what learning looks like and how that experience can create lifelong learners and really cultivate that in them, which I think is so cool. I get so jazzed over that. I think it's super exciting. Lena Phillip, hello, how are you? I'm so glad that you're here. I love it. So cool. I definitely agree. So many things that they do every day are such an experience. Okay, so I just wanted to leave you with that. Learning is an experience, school is a place. Something that we definitely have to remember. I would absolutely love to continue this conversation with you guys. If you want to connect, there is my information. You can always connect on my website, andymcnair.com. All of the resources that I shared with you are there. On the very front page of my website, I have a remote learning resources place, and you can click on any of those things. So super easy to find. But I think more than anything, I just want to tell you guys how much I appreciate the work that you're doing. I feel like I know that I say that all the time, and I want it to come from a really, really authentic place. I mean it with everything in me. As educators, no one has been able to take a situation and use it the way that educators have done. And I think it's so powerful. And I always say, I've named all of my work A Meaningful Mess because that's the story of my life. But right now, gosh, what an opportunity to take a mess and make it meaningful. So I appreciate you guys. I'm going to keep on. Next week, we will be diving specifically into PBL, and we'll go deeper into each one of these pieces. But next week's webinar is going to be all about project-based, problem-based, and passion-based learning, and how you can use that and how you'll be able to use that in the fall as well to help your students make these important connections. So again, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for spending your evening with me. I know that it's late and I know it's a Monday. You guys get some rest. I will talk to you soon. I appreciate you so, so very much. All right, I'll talk to you soon.